It being 5:34, I would like to call the Finance Subcommittee of the Wyndham Southeast School District to order at 5:05 on November 6th. And we have an agenda. I think the copies of agenda, if people don't have them, or they're on the web also. So the first item on the agenda is approval of minutes for 10/2/2019, 10/29/2019, and 10/31/2019. I think we probably already approved the ones for the second. Oh, because we didn't have.
Yeah, I don't think we did.
Okay.
And the only thing that I added, I know it was emailed to folks, it was on the web, was members of the public. So I did add those.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
As members of the public.
Because I had omitted to hand out a sign-in sheet, which reminds me, I should get a sign-in sheet circulating right away.
I'll take care of it, Sean.
And is there germane to?
I have not seen the minutes. I didn't see them on the web, so.
Yes, I called Barb today. They had been circulated by email to the committee members. We made comments, but I think they are posted now. The second was definitely posted.
Yeah.
The 29th, I spoke with Barb today, and I think they might be up now. I checked it before I came in, and they weren't up, but they will be shortly here. And then we will approve the minutes of the 31st. And then they'll be posted. Yeah. So I think the process is we don't post them, or we could post them in draft form. Sometimes we do that we used to do that with District 6. And then after they're, so that's in draft form, and then after they're formalized by a vote, then they're.
But I think they have to be up within a certain number of days. And
5
that's why-
days.
And it's not working days either, it's just 5 days.
Yes, I think we're all aware of that. So, if I hear a motion to approve the minutes,
So moved.
you want to approve them all? Or you want to go?
You have a motion to approve them all, I don't see why
10,
not.
okay, 10/2, 10/29, and 10/31. Any comments? Seeing none, are you ready to vote? All those in favor of approving the minutes for 10/2, 10/29, and 10/31/2019, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed or abstentions? Thank you. The minutes are approved, and they'll be on the web. The next item of business is approval of warrants and payrolls. And the payrolls are listed on the current agenda for the WSESD board. And we could, I don't think we make a motion to approve them at this time, but I think we do have discussion. So if there's any discussion on those payrolls, now would be the time.
That's why I'm here.
Yes, David.
Yeah, I have a bunch of, I think most of them are pretty easy. They're just kind of questions, things I haven't seen before. I'm just going to wonder about it. On 10/28, on that batch of warrants, there was, check number 2298 was $1,579 for a MacBook Air 13-inch computer, which is not a particularly high price, but I'm wondering, why are we buying one at a time? Don't we buy those in batches? Because we buy a lot of them.
We buy a lot of the Chromebooks, the Mac Air, but it's not.
Those are for the staff, right?
That one specifically, if it's the same one, that is for Allison Cram, who is our technology integration person, and her MacBook went away.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah.
requested.
Yeah, then you don't keep a stash.
We don't keep a
I'm
stash
not
of
surprised.
minutes.
Great. Then there was 2327, $1,700 for rigging. I think it's some loading of some big things. I just wondered what those were that we had to load and get rid of.
David,
Yes. 2327.
that was the warrant number?
No, the check number is 2327.
2327, thank you.
Yeah, so rigging, I can look it up. It sounds like something to do with the Career Center, or it could be Robert Clark, but it'll take a second to get our system up and running here. And we can.
Could you enumerate the amount?
Yeah, it's 1,700.
Any other questions?
Yeah, there's a $2360, $1,500 for Thomas Bus. And I thought we have a contract for buses, so I'm wondering why would we have a bus?
Yeah, so our
Why
contract is,
1,500?
yep, to and from school is with Cosmuscus, but there is, for field trips and
Great.
co-curricular, we
Yeah,
have the
that's what I
option.
figured. Yep. And then the Green Street, 1017 warrants, check 2080, $18,000 for Green Street upgrade air remediation. Was that something that we didn't anticipate in that whole project?
Actually, no, that was related to that project. and
Something
it was
broke
just
down?
No, it was actually just finishing the testing and balancing of the system, and we had reserve funds for finishing the project, yeah.
Great. Let's see. And then I wonder if on in the October 8th, check 475 was 2735 to repair a Honda. I think it was a van, I believe. And that's a lot. It was an old van. I'm wondering, is there a point where the police department, they have a schedule for replacing vehicles? You anticipate when these kind of costs are going to come on. So I'm just curious, do we have a place where you say, okay, this is as much as we're going to put into
The
this?
useful life, yeah, we do evaluate that. As I recall, that was a donated vehicle. Does anybody?
That's EES
Yeah.
vehicle.
Yeah, it's a donated vehicle to EES.
And that's what it needed to get it going?
Yes, and you know, we don't budget for funding EES. It's completely separate. So their funding review and procurement, we do make sure that there's a purchase order, there's approval, that it meets the basic control. But when it comes to, explaining the rationale for a purchase, it's really a different, it's not our taxpayer dollar.
And it's probably not very much to pay for access to a van for a while.
Right.
Then the September 22nd, check 1145496. It seems unusual.
Yeah, that sounds like maybe a purchase.
I think I
order.
got maybe one too many ones in there. It's to Hein, H-E-I-N, for an SU rental, $5,544.
Yeah, that sounds like the rent, monthly rent for the central office.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, I thought somebody else owned that building.
It changed
Steve
ownership.
Hine, yeah.
Okay.
The
It changed ownership?
Yeah, the ownership.
I didn't recognize that. Let's see. And then the two transfers, the capital balance transfer on 1022 of $1,000,004 to the BOHS transfer, that's just moving it over to the
Yes.
merge district, and the unassigned fund balance transfer for $1 million is the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know how, actually, I don't know how it works in any of the schools. How does money get specifically assigned to the capital balance?
So it's typically funded in the line items like at Brattleboro Town. If you remember all of those codes, there's an awful lot of them, but the 451 codes in each of the schools was to fund the long-term capital plan project. So you have a 5-year plan, like the Green Street project was $1 million, there was the Academy project, there's a number of projects, and it's that appropriation in the general fund that funds those long-term plans. That's the primary source. The other source is at the end of a fiscal year, like we had in fiscal year 19, because the Academy School addition that had been reserved, a reserve for that, didn't actually begin a construction phase. We want to talk about that soon.
Right.
That was a $200,000 surplus, and that got transferred to the capital fund.
Right.
So it's always consistent with a board-approved plan.
Right, and so, and the unassigned is when we have a surplus, that's where
Right.
that goes.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's it, thanks.
That's it?
Yep.
Any other, yes,
So
Christina?
I had sent a bunch of questions to you, and neither my phone or my computer seems to want to light up with the emails that I had sent you, but I can remember some of them. One of my concerns was, and I had said I would look at the Guilford, do we have a Guilford 5-year capital plan?
We do have a capital plan. It hasn't been formalized over a 5-year
Okay.
period, but John Gagnon has been in touch with me to formalize it.
Because there was an HVAC, quite expensive HVAC repair in Guilford, and I had asked Sean if that was on the capital plan or if that was on unexpected expense.
It was a lightning strike that
That was the
fortunately
lightning strike, okay.
will be covered by insurance.
By insurance, that was my question, okay.
Yeah.
And then I went looking for the Guilford 5-year capital plan and thought, oh, I'm
Yeah.
adding 1,000. And then the other question I had was I noticed a lot of line items for bottled water and wondered why, I just keep seeing them and approving them and wondered, is there some issue with our water? Because, you know, I think the standards for school drinking water are pretty high, so I was curious.
Yeah, I know, I can speak to the high school. When we get to parent conferences and open house, we do provide teachers with bottled water. We have kids that go around because the teachers are talking from 3 to 7. And so we do provide them water during parent conferences.
I wonder if that's different than the big
That's
jugs.
different, yeah, that's
bubblers.
different, yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
'cause I
bubbler.
know we have a lot
Yeah,
of
we
those.
have a couple of bubblers in the high school. You know, I have one in my office, and that's especially useful if you have somebody who's very upset in your office and you say, can I get you a drink of water?
Well, that's what I'm kind of wondering if the
Yeah.
people that don't have access to regular drinking water, or maybe a nurse's office where there's,
No, I think the nurses I think have I should speak, I'm not sure which the nurses have. But around the school, we have 2 filtered water stations that have been, they're very popular and they're used a lot by the kids and by the teachers for their own water.
It's a regular municipal
Right.
water being filtered.
Right.
Right, I
And-
love that.
Yeah, and that's the
That's a good
way,
idea.
yeah, and you know, as we go through, those have both been purchased by student groups.
Mhm.
And so we hope that trend would continue.
Is that it?
I guess that's it for now.
No,
Okay.
just to catch up with David's other question about the rigging, it was a career center expense, and it had to do with the mini mill. It was part of a grant-funded purchase of equipment.
Oh, that machine,
Yeah.
the machine tool?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Let's see why it costs a lot of money to unload it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I had a couple of questions. David's already covered quite a few, and Christina also, that I had noted. One of the things on check number 2422, it was the warrants 110419. It was to a doctor, and I was wondering if insurance ever covers, you know, if a doctor comes and does an evaluation.
No.
Whether there's no insurance?
No.
Okay, thank you. And then check number 1983, it was for kerosene, and I was kind of curious. I presume that must be for a heating situation, and it must be because,
Yeah.
oh, it's Guilford, because the
Guilford's-
tank is outside.
Heating plant is kerosene, yeah. Backup, that's their
Oh,
backup.
the backup.
Yeah,
And the tank has to be outside, so it
Right.
has to be kerosene.
yeah.
Yeah, we had the same thing at the town office, and I think we've swapped it over and realized the savings, but it costs quite a bit to swap it over.
Yeah, but their primary heating is a nice new pellet
Yeah.
system.
Yep, okay. And then I think David probably covered, I had a little trouble following because my notes are different, and it was check number 2028, and that was the refractory, so it must have been a boiler repair for $68,450.
It was, that's the brick, yep, for the lining, we knew that needed to be replaced.
Yep.
And, yep,
That is a capital plan.
there was a capital planned item.
Was that at the, or up here, or?
At the high school,
At
the
the high
main, the main heating plant.
Well, I know Robert has been talking about that for a while. And then 2069 is the check number, date was 8/29, and it said ice cream and cookies for the WSESU, and the amount was $1,089.25.
Ice cream.
Yeah, we'll have to look at and see what that was a reimbursement for. So it's the school district reimbursing the SU, and I don't know if it was related to the food program. It sure sounds like it, but
Yeah. It seemed like, it seemed like a lot of money for
Yeah.
ice creams.
And what was that check number?
The check number is 2069, and I had the date of 8/29.
Okay. All right.
Then I also picked up on that Honda Odyssey, but that's already been talked about. And then the next one, I think I asked about that last time, and that's a reimbursement for a partial on a PV system.
That's right. That's the
Okay.
Brattleboro Town entered into an early solar agreement with Next Summer. And so that's part of the net metering
Okay.
payment as a result of that photovoltaic system that's been operational.
Right.
For
And then
many years.
Yeah.
on 10/1, check number 224, rain suits for, I presume it's like pre-K or the $720.
That was at Demerson.
Yes, it's for Demerson, but it's a PTFO reimbursement for.
Uh-huh.
it's for-
Yeah, okay.
So not out of the operating budget.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And in general, if you are looking at the detail of the transaction in the warrant, the very first sequence of numbers, anything that starts with a 1 is related to the general fund, it's taxpayer money. If it's anything else, most often it's a self-funded expense, like if it's
Where there'd be a revenue stream.
yeah, it's like a
to
9 is
yeah,
the student activity fund.
yeah.
A 7 is the endowment fund, and so on. There are a number of funds, but generally, if it's anything other than a 1, it usually has its own revenue
Yeah.
source. It's not a taxpayer
Perfect.
cost.
And then I'll just make a comment on, as I always do when it comes around, the check number 1834, which is the debt service payment.
Mhm.
And it had principal payment and interest payment, and usually when I see that, I make a note, and then you give us a little summary of where we are in terms of the debt service.
Yeah, so the main debt that the system has now is the BUHS. It's the 2002 project that's almost in terms of the bond term, almost at the end of the term. It's 2024 is the end of the term. So it's a $1.6 million principal payment annually, and then there's been a declining interest expense. It's been nearly $400,000, and as we come to the very end, it continues to decline. And so, as I say, fiscal year '24 is the last scheduled payment. And of course, we've been very mindful of that as we look at the capital plan, the long-term capital plan. We try to align the assets that funded 20 years ago with their useful life as they need to be replaced. So it's I think we're on schedule for maintaining this excellent facility with that plan.
And maybe it'd be time to ask another question. I think I remember you saying in the past that if you had a debt payment, the debt payment actually helps you a little bit with the funding cap education amount, because it reduces, in other words, it's like a credit almost.
It's an exemption from the penalty, but it doesn't actually reduce your total cost per student.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so it just means that if it's the debt service that puts you over into the penalty, you won't be assessed a penalty, but you're still gonna pay the full tax rate that's associated with you spending 1.6 million in debt divided by, 1,000 kids, or now it's 2,400 kids.
I see.
You're still paying that calculated tax rate. You're just not assessed a penalty for doing a nice job keeping your facility current.
Thank you. And the last one was the warrants 930, I had two there. Check number 1473, and it was on 9/24/19 in the amount of $2881.20.
Was that the Grafton Inn?
Yes.
Okay.
I can speak to that. So every summer, the WSESD and you, administrative leadership team, does some sort of professional development. This year, we decided with Act 173, we needed to do our own professional development rather than going to a conference. It focused on Tier 1 behavior, Tier 1 academics. So we went as a group to the Grafton Inn. In years past, probably the last 5 minimally, we've gone to the Vermont Principals Association Conference at Killington. We don't really have enough time when we're going to a conference presented by someone else to get our own work done. It did end up much cheaper doing our own, at $193.65 per person, whereas Killington last year was $492.23 per person. So not only did we save money, we got our own work done that we needed to get done.
Perfect. And then the next one was the 930, check number 1643, and that was the board retreat, the WSESD board. The amount was $908.92.
Yep. So that was when we had our retreat. It was the first time that this board has, well, as you know, your new board, had a chance to actually come together and start to get to know each other, what philosophies were, and create sort of a working group. So we hired an outside facilitator to come in and work with all of us.
Perfect. That's all the question I had.
I got my email open. There was a terminology for $1,800, a bunch of things called carts. Is that what was in a shopping cart? Is that what that means? From the warrants of 10/7, I'm sorry,
What check number?
I'm looking for it. I can't find it now. 19,
I think we probably should move on.
yeah, I just got Joe's.
So we've all the discussion except for perhaps Christine will find her question as I talk.
I found it.
On the warrants and payrolls have been completed, and we will bring that up in the regular board meeting, starting at 6. So it's on the agenda item, and Christina will read the warrant amounts and the dates, and then we will vote as a full board, and at that time, in other words, we don't take action in the finance committee other than to question the administration and Frank, and so I guess we're good.
I found the PO number. I found PO numbers. Does that help?
I can work with that.
There's like 10 of them, but one of them is 2007-00090. But there's pages of things called cart. $1,900, $230.
Do you have your vendor name? and I can send
Does
you,
not say.
send the
Says
committee.
general supplies.
Yeah, it's likely to do with the school supply order that it is through school specialty, and we do have an interface with them where we purchase on using their website,
Okay.
and they pack the boxes and ship it to the schools,
You add it to your cart.
and you add it to your cart.
That's what it sounded like, okay.
So it would be a lot of different boxes, a lot of different carts.
Okay.
I'll verify that that's what that is, and
It made sense, it just seemed like $5,000 spent on carts, I was wondering what we were doing.
yeah.
Okay.
So, that being said, I think have completed item number 2 in the agenda, and we'll move on to item number 3. Discussion of field turf improvement project and preparation for the WSESD board meeting discussion. What is your pleasure? Any comments from board members?
What is? I'm not understanding the question, sorry.
If there's any discussion on item 3 of the agenda.
Well, what are we going to go forward with to present to the board for the cost estimate?
I actually think I misspoke in one of the meetings, and I was under the assumption that an RFP and an RFQ could be disseminated, and that you could just then firm and finalize a price. And then there could be a decision at some later time to either accept, I mean, you do accept that, but it's not quite as, let's say, I hate to use the word, but I will, frivolous, as what I initially thought. If you make an RFP, then you've made a commitment to some extent to the vendor, so that, I see you frowning, Steve, am I incorrect?
Well, if I could comment.
Yes, please.
So the typical sequence is projects considered by a board, goes through a budget cycle, and it's approved by the electorate, and then that plan gets implemented through this bidding process, which is the RFQ, RFP. The point is that there's public approval, and then there's board approval, and the intent is to implement the project if you get to that RFQ, RFP stage. So it's not like illegal, or it's not like not allowed, but it's highly unusual to ask vendors to participate in a bid process if the board still hasn't made a decision to move forward with it. What it's doing is, instead of paying an engineer and or a consultant, generally thousands of dollars for a large project, you're asking your vendors in the community to kind of throw you a freebie. It's not illegal. The consequence is that the next time you go out for a bid, if it's known, and we're not a big region, so if it's known that, well, you're not sure if this board is actually committed to the project, then you tend to get a higher pricing in the next round. But again, I'm just saying this is the normal practice.
Yeah.
So if the committee and the board is not clear on consensus, which it seems, we've had a lot of different feedback from the public and from the board, then it would be more common to either say, we're not doing the project now as a board, or we have lots of different points of view on this, and we'd like the community to make the decision, and you warrant another vote. But the point is once you get to the RFQ, RFP phase, you generally want to be serious about moving forward and following through with what you've asked the bidding community to consider, because it is a considerable amount of work, as it has been for Chris
Yeah,
as well as
yeah.
Robert Clark.
Well, I just wanted to clarify that, because I think I misspoke in that, I thought that it'd be like hiring a contractor, which I was for years. I mean, I go out, spend all this time and give somebody a price, and they go, no, I think we're not gonna do that now. So, it's different. It's probably a bigger, it's a bigger commitment in terms of the community having made up their mind which direction they wanna go. So, I appreciate that. So, in light of that, is there any further discussion from the board on turf field improvement project in preparation for the other, next meeting that we're gonna be going to tonight?
Thank you, Chris Sawyer, for this. That's my one comment where,
I mean, I've been spending, I'm sure, as much time as everybody else, looking at all the comments, listening to all the opinions, looking at all the scientific research that's been done. And, you know, it's a little daunting. This is not really what I expected when I ran for the WSESD board. I thought we'd be more dealing with educational issues. And I think this field is an educational issue, but it's not straightforward. And it's difficult. So, but I do think we somehow have to make forward progress one way or the other. And how we do that is sort of beyond my scope. If anybody, including the public at this point, has any comments, just to try to see where we want to go as a, you know, a four-town community.
Sean?
Do you have any, actually, if I could, do you have any comments, Chris, at this time, or would you rather? Oh, Steve, yeah.
So, you know, this has been a long and it's been a long process. You know, we've heard a lot of testimony, we've heard a lot of passion, we've heard a lot of people present conflicting studies, and you know, and I can't tell you the number of times Chris Sawyer's come into my office and said, well, I have some new numbers, and I have some new numbers. And you know, and Chris has done, and Robert have done incredible work trying to get numbers that are based on other projects that are done, based on conversations. So I think at this point, I think we've heard a lot of comments about organic versus not organic. I think at this point, I would recommend that we invest the money into getting an engineering study done that would get us a real estimate. That we say, okay, if we're serious about this field improvement, let's get the engineering study done. Let's put that money into that and see what we get. Based on that conversation, then maybe we go forward with an RFP, RFQ. The other alternative, which, I mean, I am in favor of a turf field, but the other alternative would be to, at this point, for the board to say, we're not going to pursue the turf project at all. And I guess at this time, I kind of feel like that's the point we're at. Are we going to go ahead with an engineering study? Or are we just going to say we're not going to do this? What we would do at that point at the high school is we would probably engage and ask for an independent look at our field use space. And we'd look at all of our on-campus fields. And we'd look at you know, we'd look at Tenney Field, we'd look at the new practice field, we'd look at Drummer. You know, we'd look at the on-campus fields that we directly control. You know, we wouldn't look at Familari or Baybeck fields, we would just look at our field space that we control and we own. And then we would, you know, look, and I don't know what this looks like yet, but we'd look at a longer-term feasibility study. We would, at this point, probably have to not expand to any more sports.
So no ultimate frisbee probably.
Well, again, I don't want to pit sports and programs against programs, but I think what Chris and I would have to do is sit down and look at our current practice field schedule and say, what can we really accommodate safely and competitively? And I think that's a conversation that Chris and I would have to have in conjunction with Robert. You know, but my sense is that at this point, we either need to go ahead and get a study that gets us some real current numbers and quit asking Chris to go call somebody that he knows in Massachusetts or in Virginia. We need to get some real numbers, or we just need to say we're not gonna do this right now.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, in a sense, not doing it right now doesn't address the main problem, which is accessibility of all athletes and some physical education classes. So
Right.
that's the problem, in a nutshell. And it's a long-standing problem as a, well, I won't say it again, but you all know that I'm about ready to say it. On the BOHS board, this came up again and again and again, and so that's how we became aware of the issue. Yes, Christine.
Do we have a guesstimate on what time and cost of an engineering study, and who would do that?
Again, I hate giving estimates, especially on camera.
Plus or minus $100,000.
$70,000. Plus or minus $100,000.
That's what I'm giving you. I'm giving you that. I'm giving you that range of accuracy.
You know, it would have to be. It would look at that one field. It would look at the what's underneath it. We haven't even talked about crafting that study, but that's my best guess.
And this would be beyond the scope of your already, and Chris's already, and Robert's already, pretty broad knowledge of the fields
Right.
and the field space.
Yes. But what we'd come out with out of that, the goal for me would be to come to the board with, here's the cost
Yeah.
of a synthetic surface.
We have to know, it's still a budgetary estimate, because you don't know the actual cost until you do a bid. But yeah, it's as good as it gets.
So that there
A bid.
are two ways to pin that down. One would be an RFQ, RFP, because then we'd be getting a proposal from a firm that says, okay, it's 1.175 million, and that we know, or the engineering study, which would cost us $70,000, might come back with the same numbers and the same conclusion.
Sure.
So that would be, yeah.
The difference is, as Frank pointed out, that the RFP process, if we're gonna do it the traditional way, we would have already gotten, board approval and a vote.
Yeah.
Move ahead,
Yeah,
so.
well, it'd probably make the vendor a little more relaxed,
Competitive as well, in
competitive.
terms of pricing. So in our best interest, that's what we're obviously looking.
Yeah. Yes, Christine.
So how would this be, there was a study done by Stevens, is that correct, at some point?
I think like in the early 2000s, we would need to do a fresh
You'd
study.
need to do a fresh study?
Yes.
Okay, so that study is not,
It was in 2013, but it was pretty low level, not a lot of money spent, but soil conditions in other fields, but not to the extent that this would be.
and that was Stevens, right?
I believe so.
I mean, we already have quite a good deal of information. I know Robert's expressed a knowledge of what actually took place under part of Natowich when the track was done. So the drainage, the lighting, there is institutional knowledge that does have some parts. Yeah.
can I suggest another alternative, that we try to get as much information we can and then let the voters vote on it?
That would be a possibility. It'd be another warning, it'd be another special vote, which, you know, costs a certain amount of money. I think there'd probably be a lot more interest in that vote than many other votes you could choose. So it might, but the nice thing, as far as I see, if it was a public vote, it wouldn't be made by a board that we're having difficulty making up in our minds because of the divergent views. So if the public said no, then the public says no. If the public says yes, then we go ahead with the project. So it would be, you know, probably the most democratic. I'm not necessarily advocating for it because there are a lot of steps that have to be achieved before you can do that, but, you know, as I've said before, there is a time is gonna make up our mind if we don't make up our mind. And, you know, next fall, do we have any idea that we would have a synthetic field ready to go? And you know, it's a possibility at this moment, but if we can't, as a board, come up with a decision, that's probably gone. So then maybe letting the public, you know, all the voters, the 14,000 voters in the 4 towns, could have a say. Yes?
Yeah, I think a timeline is, you know, if the board made a decision to do what Christina just said, maybe we consider, you know, another public vote, you know, you'd probably have at least a 45-day time period, given that it has been quite a, you know, a debated issue, and so there's a good public awareness. If you wanted to just follow through the timeline, you know, 45 days to warn it, to schedule the meeting, and then, you know, Chris, if you think about 45 days from now, and then add that, we said at least 60-day timeline to the state required bid process, then you're probably, you know, I don't know, that would probably be April, and I don't know if that's realistic time to engage a vendor to get something done in July.
Contracts for summer construction would need to be signed in March.
They need to be signed in March, so.
And maybe I misunderstood. I thought it was gonna be a ballot question. It would be a ballot, so that would
It's
be
whatever.
all members in all 4 towns would vote, and then they'd be commingled just the way the November 19th vote is gonna be.
So there's 2 formats of voting on projects. One is the Australian ballot, which is what you're just describing. The other is the floor vote off a you know, a warned article at a public meeting. And the board would need to decide that as well,
Yes, yes.
relatively quick.
Yeah. So those are our 2 possibilities.
Yeah.
Yes, Emily?
So the 3 things that the finance committee would be reporting out to the board, aside from the meeting minutes, is the $70,000 estimate for $70,000 estimate for the engineering study.
Yeah.
The field access survey is an option, if we didn't want to go forward with anything on Natowich. And then if we wanted to move forward with artificial, which we already have the cost estimates for, solely we would do that through a special vote, potentially, that's one option, or we could just move forward with it. Is that what, because I'm just wondering, I know on the equity committee, we got into all these different ideas that like we could do, but it really wasn't the purview of the equity committee to make those decisions, so like, we're reporting out these 3 options that we came up with, or?
Yeah, there would be a 4th option, and the 4th option would be for the finance committee to say, okay, let's go ahead with the RFQ, RFP, which is a big commitment. And then if the full board also, either tonight or at the next meeting, said on retrospect, we would like to make a vote on, and a motion is made, and either an RFQ and an RFP are disseminated to vendors, or it is not. So that would be another way to think about it. So it's a multifaceted, layered bookshelf. We just don't know where to put the book.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
Can the public weigh in at all at this point?
yes, and if it's brief and succinct, be appreciated.
It is faceted, like a book, as you said. When I came into this process, and I kind of was told I came into it late, but I went through all the minutes that were provided to us, and then I went from the Finance Committee, and I went through all the minutes of the regular board, and I went through all the agendas of the board, and there was very, very little on the high school level. Most of it was on the financial committee. And even then, when I went through some of these things, that the agenda didn't even say what was talked about, which I want to caution boards to do, to really be clear. But I came in here neutral a long time ago when I first got wind of this. I came in absolutely neutral until I started looking around, reading everything, talking to people, talking to the school people, knowing that there is a field problem, fully understand that. I have grandchildren who are athletes. I know there's a field problem, especially for women. But there are so many issues to this, and on the top of my list is the students. And the students have a good play field, the students are safe and healthy. And then there's the environmental issue, then there's the cost issue. And I know the board has sent this all out to committees to talk about all of these issues. And I do think that the board and the public needs to really look at all the issues before making a decision and not jumping into a synthetic field. Because I've come around to the idea that it isn't safe, it isn't healthy, it isn't environmentally conscious, and it's very expensive. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Kate.
This will be really quick. I would make a suggestion that if you're gonna do it, spend $70,000 on an engineering study, that you just don't do a study on synthetic field. We should do alternatives, because we're gonna end up back exactly where we are now. Because I think part of the problem is people don't feel like they have all the information to compare. And that's, I think if you're gonna have a public vote or any kind of board vote, if people felt like all the information's there, I think it'll go smoother.
Thank you, Kate. Yes, sir.
Yes, I would like to discuss a little more about this.
Could you identify yourself, please?
Mark Younger, Brattleboro, Vermont. I'm a taxpayer. I'm here to discuss about the asphalt, the artificial turf. I thought I was supposed to be here at 6 o'clock, but you're discussing it now, which
Well, this is the Finance Committee.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but you're talking about monies that you wanna spend just for research on that field? Is that what you're talking about right now?
Well, you'd have to, I'm going to, I appreciate your comments, but
It's not a comment, I'm asking a question.
it's, what's your question again? I'm sorry.
My question is, are you discussing amount of money to look into the field? Is that what you're discussing
No.
right now?
No.
What are you discussing
No.
at this moment?
No, we are not looking at a dollar amount at this moment.
What are you discussing though about that part of it?
I can phrase it,
All right, go ahead.
So each subcommittee was tasked with figuring out certain aspects, questions that came up from the public last time.
Yeah, I
So
didn't
that-
get a chance to be here last time,
So,
but yeah.
yeah, well, the nice thing is actually at the board meeting, we'll be sharing, like, for example, the equity committee, what the equity committee did. Not making decisions, but at least getting some numbers together so that we have a few answers or more questions. So right now, all we're doing is trying to figure out some options that would exist financially, but the board could say, actually, we don't like any of these options. But we just have to get some numbers, otherwise.
And the board meets at 6 o'clock, or is this the board that you're talking about? Which board is
The
it?
board will be at 6. This is a subcommittee.
Okay, so you guys just discuss, and then the board that meets at 6 o'clock is the actual one who gets down to the actual money part of it?
Essentially, all the numbers will be represented at 6 or after 6, the stuff that we've talked about here, because this was just what was tasked to us by the board, to like get together some numbers or some ideas around numbers.
And do we have numbers together yet?
Limited, but
What's that?
we have some that we'll share. I think he'll be sharing mostly.
You are going to share those numbers with me now?
Not now, but at the board meeting.
At the board meeting. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure that I had a chance to talk about this before
Yeah.
something further went in, that's all.
We only have a little bit, just a minute, please. Are there any more board comments at this time? All right, we'll take another 4 minutes of comments.
Just a quick comment, if I may.
Yeah.
I like what Steve Perrin was recommending. I think the public was looking for additional information on both alternatives. And if what Steve was recommending was a study that was going to undertake what is better, whether it's a turf field, whether it's an organic field, like an existing grass field, and what the cost would be, what the benefits would be on both, taking into consideration all the playing times that are necessary. I think that's what the public was looking for, was more information based, because it seems like it's been on a track for a turf field, and we haven't heard, as a member of the public, we haven't heard anything concerning grass other than the fact that it's not practical.
If I may comment, I think you're right, Paul. I think it has been a track to look at a synthetic turf field. And the reason for that is that the fine individuals that we have on the staff and in the central office, looking at the problem, they determined that that was probably the way to alleviate the problem the most efficiently and to the best outcome. So yes, I would say that you are correct. And that is the reluctance, as was just expressed by the principal, and to some degree, if we don't do a synthetic field, it's probably going to be status quo for next year. So,
Yeah, but I think if you're talking about spending that kind of money, you want to make the right
status quo
decision.
just means we'll just,
If it means
we're
putting
going
it
to go
off,
along, we'll get along just the way we are
No.
now and in the future.
if it means putting it off for a year because you've done your homework, it makes sense.
Well, the board will decide. Chris, do you have any comments? Thank you for all your hard work.
And Sean, we did have the budget timeline on the agenda.
Oh,
if you
yes, all
wanted to-
right. So let us move quickly on to that.
And, I know we're gonna discuss it at the board meeting as well, it's on the agenda, so it's
Yep.
not critical. I just wanted to mention that that you have a document, it's similar in terms of its outline as previous board budget deliberations, so
All right.
we can talk about it at the full board
Yeah.
meeting.
And I think that I would entertain a motion to adjourn the subcommittee of the WSESD. All those in favor?
Aye.
And we are adjourned at 5:58. Thank you very much.
Struggling.